Wow! This is awesome. It raises the vibration right away.
It does, yeah, yeah. The practice of the Didge really is about the breath. And one of the ways that you learn to do is, what you learn to do is called circular breathing, which is a misnomer because it's really not circular. It's breathing area, and you heard me do that in between. But while I'm breathing it in, I'm also expelling air through my mouth. So there's a reserve of air that goes through the tube, basically, because it's a big, long, hollow tube. It's an instrument that's been around for 40,000 to 100,000 years, as old as the Aboriginal culture in Australia. Often it's a eucalyptus didge. There's eucalyptus trees growing all over the place there. I saw a eucalyptus forest when I was there. My friend Jeremy called it a didgeridoo forest. And usually it's a eucalyptus that's been hollowed out by termites, and then it's chosen for that reason, shaped, formed, and as you can see from this didge, sometimes there's artwork that's done on it. This artist is Naui is a particularly gifted artist, and it plays really, really well. I learned it years ago, probably about 5 years ago is when I started. I was just fascinated by it and frustrated trying to do the circular breathing. I try and try and try. And I had a spirit teacher come in at one point, and basically what he would tell me was two things: breathe and just relax. One of the keys to playing the didge, as I learned, was it's a rhythm instrument. It's not a horn or a flute or anything like that. It's a rhythm. It's a one-note instrument. But as you heard, you can get different overtones. You can also introduce your voice, as I did a little bit, and create different sounds and different sound qualities to it. You also, though, when I first learned, I learned that the breath or the pauses could be used as part of the rhythm. So I would breathe, I'd do something like this. And breathe in between, and it still maintained a certain rhythm to it. And then the funny part, then it's enough about the didge, but the funny part is one day I was practicing and trying this, and I talked to a couple people about it too, in addition to the spirit teacher, and I got it, and I went, oh my God, I've got it. And then I couldn't find it again. It took me another couple of weeks to find it again. It's like, get your mind out of it.
That's a teacher in itself.
Breathe and relax. So it's been a great companion, and I often do in my private consultations, my private healing sessions, sometimes I'll use a didge to go over a person's body, and it sort of loosens up the energy, and as you described it, it kind of opens the heart, so that then whatever else may be done on behalf of the client, they're that much more ready.
Yeah. So this is only one of the tools that you use during your practices. Tell us about, before we get more into the details, what would you say is your relationship to the Earth, to Mother Earth, or to planet Earth?
The latest book is called Earth Magic, and the latest oracle cards, Earth Magic Oracle cards. And really this is what Earth Magic is about. I really call the sort of the umbrella of what I do Earth Magic, because it is really working with celestial and earth spirits. The Earth speaks to us all the time. There's a life force in every being on this planet, as well as in ourselves, and when we are able to tune into that life force in another being, like an animal or a plant or a tree or another human being, there's something interesting that can happen with that. And that's that when we tune in at that level, magic can happen. When we collaborate with that life force in some way, for instance, collaborating with spirit animals. When an animal shows up in an unusual way or repeatedly, whether it's the physical animal or a symbol of the animal, oops, Mike's there, the symbol of the animal, there's something really special going on. And that is that it's not just the animal, although that's one perspective and one way of looking at it. Say, oh, look at that fox that just crossed my path, or what about that crow that landed right in front of me, or that hummingbird that buzzes right in front of me? That's one perspective. The second is that there's a life force in that. There's no contest on that. There's a spirit or life force, a life energy, you could say, that's animating that being.
Mm-hmm.
Third, though, and this is real key to collaboration. It's possible when that animal shows up in an unusual way, again, symbol or the physical animal, let's say a dream, that's a symbol of the animal, that the spirit of the species is actually trying to reach you through that being, that animal. So let's say I had one experience where I was getting ready. I'm a singer-songwriter too. That's one of the other things I do. I like a little diversity.
Mm-hmm.
And I was getting ready a few years ago to go into the studio for my first time in many, many years to record some original songs. And I'm nervous. I'm going, that voice that comes up always when you stretch yourself, goes, what are you trying to think you are? You're supposed to be doing this other stuff. You're supposed to be writing, etc. So what happened right about that moment is a grasshopper, who I haven't seen a grasshopper for years, a huge grasshopper about that big, came in through the open window or the open sliding door, landed right next to my computer, and I swear to God, looked at me. And I'm thinking, okay, Mr. Animal Spirit Guide guy, what does it mean? And what I was able to discern is the grasshopper. First thing when I closed my eyes, I said, "Spirit, grasshopper spirit. What's the message?" And I heard in that inner voice, "Take the leap." The metaphor for what was happening. And then I did a little research too from a more logical point of view or cognitive point of view, and I found out the grasshopper sings to attract a mate. So that just the word "sings" really was the one that jumped out at me as I go for it. So it was, you could say, God's way or Spirit's way of communicating to me through this particular being and the collective consciousness of all grasshoppers, or you could say the oversoul. Kind of like at Grand Central, Grasshopper said, "Okay, all right, Jake, jump in there now. Okay, jump right next to his. There you go. He got it. Okay, he's looking at you now. Okay, there you go." Trying to get a message to you, that's from Grand Central. So that's essentially one way. Animal spirits can help heal us. Certainly plant spirits do. A lot of the medications and medicines that we take, the herbs, supplements, etc., come from these, our brother and sister plants too.
Because you're also a shaman, aren't you?
I've been called that, yes, a shaman, amongst other things, but I've been called a shaman. And the basis for earth magic really is shamanic work and shamanic philosophy, as well as the methodologies. There's been a revival of shamanism in the last several years, and I think partly due because, again, the earth spirits are calling for us to be able to work with the earth in a different way and to relate to the earth. I've said again and again, it's in my opinion, it's not that we have to save the planet. Planet does not need saving. What needs rescuing or remedying, what needs to be remedied is our relationship with the planet, and we're in a very active revision of that right now. And to call on the deep memory that, for instance, shamanism provides, to be able to work with these, not just the earth elements, but the spirit of those earth elements, I think is absolutely critical. In addition to any celestial spirits, for instance, what I call celestial would be the archangels, ancestors. I'm big on ancestors these days because I've been told that's part of my assignment now, is to really continue to call in the ancestors. Ancient ones, as well as the more immediate ones of the past 3 or 4 generations. And I swear, Leela, that we're being helped. It's just a matter of opening our eyes and our hearts and our minds.
But that goes through healing, as you're saying, and we need to heal ourselves. What are some of the best methods that you find that we can heal ourselves by?
Well, one is, a very simple one is get outdoors.
Yeah.
Really relate to, don't think of just the plants and the animals as something here just for us. I think we're intended to be stewards of this planet, not dominators. So to have a stewardship relationships means that we care for the planet. You know, we care for the beings of the planet as best we can. So that's one way, is get outdoors. Go outside if you feel like you're a little toxified from, say, city energy or something like that. Is get outside. You can do a very simple thing, which is stand, put your feet, bare feet, in the ground, touch the earth, and then do some breathing. And as you're breathing, ask Mother Earth just to receive any of the toxic energy that you might be carrying. And then with each out breath, you know, send it down her way, because Pachamama, or Earth Mother, will transform that toxic energy just like it does other kinds of so-called waste, and turn it into new growth and new life. So that's one way. From the shamanic perspective, there's a couple of things that are treatments that can be done on behalf of someone at their request. One is called soul recovery, or soul retrieval. Throughout our lives, our soul can fragment or dissociate aspects, and sometimes those fragments will return and sometimes they don't. They stay away for safekeeping. My job as a soul healer practitioner, shamanic practitioner, is to work with my guides, my spirit guides, my main spirit guides. And what I do is I ask them, for instance, if I were doing a treatment with you, I'd say, spirit guides, specifically two spirit animals that I work with, power animals for this, are my buddy Raven and Wolf. And I ask them, typically, take me to that soul fragment that most needs to be returned. And then they lead the way, and I'll show, something will be shown to me in the way of a soul piece that's been lost. I'll get information on it, why the separation, why did you remain and not return. And then if I'm successful, which I've always been up to this point, knock on wood, that every time I've been able to bring that soul piece back. Sometimes they're ready to go, and sometimes I have to negotiate a little bit.
So it serves its purpose too when it's not there.
It's amazing. I'll tell you one short experience was a woman who, 28-year-old woman who, when I asked my guides to take me, they took me to about a 5-year-old soul fragment, or little girl, that was playing under the bed. She was playing under the bed with toy soldiers, and having a great time. And I said, well, explained to her what was going on, and that this woman would like her to return, and she basically asked that she be better, taken care of better. And I said, why'd you leave? She said, just nobody was there. Nobody was there to care for her, comfort her, nurture her. Brought this piece back, installed this soul piece in this woman, and then told her the story. She said, that's pretty amazing, because that's absolutely right. No one was there. I really had to take care of myself. And I used to play under the bed with toy soldiers. So there's a confirmation that I'm not just making this up, or it's not just my imagination. It's something much, much larger than that. And it's a privilege and an honor to be able to offer this kind of service to people.
Yeah.
So that's one, I'd say, one very substantial way that can help people heal from the results of trauma shamanically. There's other methods too, but certainly this is one.
And what would you say, what can we do for Mother Earth right now?
What you can do is, for instance, right now, even this is timely, but there's so much going on in the way of, storms are increasing. We've had this recent experience with Japan, where it's just devastation. The earthquake, and then the tsunami, and the nuclear meltdown. And one thing is that a lot of people, what I believe very strongly is that when things like this happen, whether it be a Katrina, Indonesia, or Haiti, or it's in our face so much of the time, and we feel, because there's a collective wave that runs through the collective consciousness, or through the collective, as some say. And sometimes you can discern what it is, and sometimes you attribute it to something else, like walking around feeling anxious and fearful and not knowing why, just jittery, not sleeping well, etc. So that's one thing, is to understand that, that this is going on. Second is, when we stay in fear, it's not doing anybody any good. So to help the earth and certainly help not just the people, but all the beings, plants, animals, and human. I downloaded in a journey meditation, I was given a ceremony to do. And it was for 7 consecutive nights up to the equinox. It's actually March 20th, but up to March 21st, every evening at 8 o'clock, this is what you do. And I've also invited other people to do this. And it's a great ceremony no matter what the purpose is. It happens to be for this. You light a candle, you sit, breathe, meditate on the flame of the candle. And as you're meditating on the flame, think of all of the people and things you love. And once, you'll know when, it could be 2 minutes, it could be 20. It's really up to you to discern this. But what you do then is you take that feeling that you've generated of meditating on the light and love, you put your hands up like this and put it in the direction of the calamity, whatever it may be. In this case, it's the disasters. I say disaster, but it's a series of them.
Yeah.
To the west, Japan, from where we are. And what you do is you can visualize this stream, that light and love, through your hands and through your heart to those people in Japan and other beings, the plant and the animal beings. You do this for, again, as long as it feels right to you. And then you take and you put your hands face, palm down to Mother Earth. And you say to Mother Earth, I forgive you. And then, this is the clincher, you ask Mother Earth for her forgiveness. And then the last piece, I just did the first one last night, then the other piece that came to me was expressing out loud my gratitude. So that may seem like a very light sort of thing, but it's not. I invite anybody to do it for any particular calamity that involves the earth. The other is just to care for the earth, plant. I think what's really important is, like, take children out, teach them about the earth. Uncover that stone that's been sitting there for a while. Watch all the little bugs. Just get to know them. Plant a garden. You can, if you live in a place where there's no land to plant, you can still. I've done this before. I plant tomato plants in tubs and in pots. Work with the earth.
Yeah.
Get to know her.
Put your hands in it.
Put your hands in it. Put your feet in it.
Yeah.
Thank her.
Yeah.
Do a blessing every time you eat. If you can thank all the beings, the plant, and if you're a carnivore too, or an omnivore, thank the beings, the plant and the animal beings. Buy organic. It's a little more expensive, but it's getting better. But buy organic. Drink milk from cows that don't get that growth hormone. We don't want to support this. Treating animals humanely. And I grant that I'm a omnivore. I'm a meat eater as well as a plant eater. And some people say, well, we shouldn't eat meat. Well, that's if that's your conviction, then don't. Be a vegetarian. But whatever we eat is something that has died, unless it's fruit. That's one of the exceptions.
Those fruits in your garden are awesome, by the way.
Yeah, the arbutus
Where
tree,
are they?
aren't they delicious? Arbutus, or they're called Spanish strawberries too. I've never seen it before. But plants that give, or trees that give fruit, they give it very generously.
Yeah.
And the reason they do is it's the natural order of things, is that when animals pick those up and they go somewhere else and they defecate, they've just planted seeds. So it allows the tree to propagate, to continue on life. For us, it's not necessarily that, but just thank you. Being grateful, again, I think is a real key. Doing a blessing every time you eat. I thank the beings that blessing that I do, and I wish I could say every time. I'm human, so I don't do it 100%, but I really make it a point to do it as much as often, is say a short prayer of gratitude. And it goes something like this typically. I thank the beings, all the beings, that have given their lives so that I may continue mine yet another day. And then I usually thank Mother Earth as well. So those are some things we can do. There's ceremonies we can do honoring the full moon, new moon, the transitions, equinox, solstices, etc. Get together with a community of people to do any kind of ceremony honoring the ancestors right around Samhain or October, the end of October, early November.
Really? Why?
Is considered to be, Samhain is a Gaelic term for that celebration, which is the belief being that at that period in the year, the veil is the thinnest, and that's when the ancestors come to visit us. So we can honor them by setting up an ancestral altar, for instance, you know, and maybe put some of the foods and such that they like out, and some of the artifacts and the sacreds that they enjoy. Those are some examples of the way we can not only honor the earth, but honor the beings of the earth.
So what would you say is the main message of ancestors right now to you? There's coming through you or for us at this period of time?
Call on us. That's the main message. Call on us. They want to help us. I just spoke to somebody. I did an interview earlier, and she was saying that she was concerned about her 16-year-old learning to drive, and her grandfather came to her and says, "Don't worry about it. I'm going to watch out for her." Things like that. They want to help us. We're in Western culture. We, unlike I would say the vast majority of cultures, especially indigenous cultures, but others too, we don't honor the ancestors. We don't pay attention to them. We don't call on them. And I guess that's a new aspect to my mission these days, since that's been happening more and more, is to call on them, but also that they can help with our healing. And that's the beauty. There's just so much. I guess one, to take it another level, is there's so much help that we can have from spirit world. It's just a matter of having the openness and the willingness in our hearts and our minds and our soul to be able to call on these spirit beings to help us, and not expect that it go exactly like I want it to. Because sometimes, as you probably know, I may ask for one thing and another thing shows up. This or something better.
So the surrounding, the allowing, the trusting is a big component of our healing right now, and the connecting with all spirit world.
And the other element to that, Lilu, is that we can, I've said this before, is the earth speaks to us. It's just we've got to learn how to listen, and to listen better and better. And that's a lot of what I think is important. And then the question comes, well, how do you listen? Well, you listen with your eyes, you listen with your ears, you listen with your body, and you listen with your mind. And what that means is messages come through just like the world comes through our senses. Spiritual messages come through no matter what the source, ancestors, angels, spirit animals, plants. They come through any of those four modalities. People tend to be really strong in one or two of those, and then maybe the others aren't quite so developed, but with practice in those one or two, the others develop. Example, my main modality that I lean on is both my hearing and my body sensations, or kinesthetics. Some call that clairsentient or clairaudient. However, over the years, as I practiced it, now I'll get images. Certainly as a writer, I get, the cognitive going. I'll get messages that show up just knowing. So if you can identify which are the strongest there, then you can start working with those. A lot of people think, well, I'm not seeing things, so I must not be very intuitive or psychic. No, maybe that just isn't your strongest. Maybe it's more about your auditory capacities. And being communication is my purpose. One of three: teacher, healer, communicator. So it makes sense that auditory would be strong for me. So that's how you get messages. Hummingbird.
Yeah, what is the hummingbird's message?
Well, it depends. I have my book Animal Spirit Guides gives some suggestions, and these are ideas that are possibilities. If you look up hummingbird in there, there's probably anywhere from 6 to 8. Could mean this, could mean this. When you read it, though, one will jump out of you. One will jump out at you and go, "Oh, okay, got it." That's one way you can do it. And these tools are bridges, really, to developing that finesse, if you will, to be able to discern. Another way is to say, like I said with grasshopper, hummingbird, what's your message? And then pay attention to whatever shows up in my eyes, or maybe my vision is directed somewhere. It could be in my mind's eye or outside.
Uh-huh.
Pay attention to what you're hearing, either that inner voice or maybe the important stranger that comes by and goes, "Oh, okay, that was the message." Pay attention to how you feel, and that includes, any aromas that come to you, tastes, anything having to do with the body, or just that thought that pops into your mind. Spirit will never tell you to do harm. Spirit will never tell you to do harm. If you're told to do harm, that's your ego, in any way, shape, or form. And it just takes practice discerning between Spirit's message and the ego's message. So, given that, let's come back here. Hummingbird. Quite often, the hummingbird's message is one of a couple. Lighten up. Don't be so serious. Lighten up, look at me. The other is the flexibility. Being able to move.
Yeah.
The other is, if you have to move, or when you have to move quickly. The other is just be a little lighter with yourself and with the world. The other is to bring sweetness into your life. You need a little more sweetness. And that could be honeybees' message too, but it certainly can be hummingbirds. So when that happens, it could be any of those four, or it could be a more direct and specific message that hummingbird is relating to you.
And this big one?
Raven, my shall we say, co-conspirator, or my power animal. Raven came to me. Power animal is, by the way, just to qualify that, is a shamanic term really, but it's not exclusive to shamanism. Everybody has a power animal. We're born with them, but after a while they get bored, because in our culture, we don't pay attention to them. We don't think that way. We think, well, it's a nice teddy bear, but is it also possibly a power animal? Or somebody had a giraffe, is that my... So discovering your power animal is one thing. In shamanic work, over the years, for a number of years as a psychotherapist, I had owl. Because owl's gift, or medicine, as it's called sometimes, was to be able to see in people's shadows. And that's part of the work, not only of shamanism, certainly, but certainly with psychotherapy. Well, owl sort of took a back seat when my buddy Raven came. About 2.5, 3 years ago, he came in, announced his presence, and basically told me, I'm gonna start working with you. Okay, so for me now, in this cycle of my life, Raven is perfect, because one of Raven's gifts is to bring from the darkness into the light that which needs to be seen. It's also, if you think darkness to light, that's a creative process. When I'm working on a song or a book or a project, something like that, often it feels kind of chaotic and like dark, and I don't know what's going on. Something's gestating, just like a pregnancy. Something's gestating. I know, well, I can't know what a pregnancy's like, not this lifetime, but something's gestating and it doesn't quite form yet. So I ask Raven to help me, and it may not happen like that day or that hour, but eventually he'll help that come into form. And that's true with spiritual messages as well. Great manifester. And I've had many demonstrations of that. And I'm talking not just parking places, those 8 out of 10 times, I'll get a parking place, but that's like parlor games.
That's not really your juice.
Well, it helps, believe me, go downtown Laguna, try to find a place on a busy summer day, it's great, it helps, but it sometimes shows up in unexpected ways, or it's not exactly the one I wanted, that sort of thing. So Raven is also a good guide when I do someone's a soul retrieval on behalf of someone. Raven, as I mentioned, and Wolf are great guides. They take me there. They know how to deal with what's called the lower world, where I typically go to find lost soul fragments. So Raven's been with me and has been a very good power animal and spirit guide, and I do call on him regularly. Now, what we're seeing here is a form that could be called a totem of Raven. A totem has a couple meanings. Often it's used interchangeably for power animal or spirit animal. It's okay. I think I make a distinction, but it's also a representation of the spirit animal that you may work with. I have a totem here of the other main man. That's a wolf, a little soapstone carving of wolf. So that I've got the two that help me probably the most. And then in addition, snake, which is my other power animal. So those three are the main. Owl has taken a little bit of a back seat, shows up now and again, but those are the three power animals that I work with for different purposes.
And how about this? What is this?
That's a rattle. I've got a drum here, and because it's a little damp, it doesn't play well. Its leather tends to soften and go bleh, when it's wet. This has got a raven on it. It's
Yeah.
a rattle. It was gifted to me. It's got a little tuft of rabbit fur and some beads and some leather with beads. Rattling or drumming is used quite often in shamanic work. It's not the only thing, but the shaman's gift is to be able to send, it could be his or her, but I'm going to use his because it's easier to talk that way. His capacity, his gift is to be able to go into this area of spirit world called non-ordinary reality.
Yeah.
And there he works with his spirit helpers to bring back soul pieces, to receive ceremonies that he can bring back to enact with an individual of family or community or the world. Just like I was telling you about the ceremony, the healing.
Mm-hmm.
And there's different ways that he can induce the altered state of reality, that's required. It could be singing, could be dancing, or one common way is drumming or rattling. Drumming, and I'm going to call it drumming, even though you could substitute the word rattling, is typically done about 4 to 7 beats a second. Very monotonous, boring. Now, I've also done hypnosis for 35 years, and that's one of the things, how you induce a trance in hypnosis. You bore the person till they're gone. What that does, seriously, what that does is that the brain waves slow down.
Uh-huh.
So this 4 to 7 beats per second, after about 10 minutes, it's been scientifically proven in more than one research project that if you listen to this kind of monotonous beat or rattle for about 10 to 12 minutes, what happens eventually, I'm losing you already, see? But it's true, that's what happens, is that what happens is eventually your brain slows down from the beta cycle, which is 14 cycles per second and above, and will slow down into alpha, which is that kind of drifty, dreamy state. You're still awake and alert and everything, but you're a little bit drifty, like how you might feel when you first get up or just before you go to sleep. The fascinating thing with this research has shown with this kind of a rhythm is that eventually the brain will dial down to what's called a theta rhythm, which is 4 to 7 cycles per second, 4 to 7 beats per second. Isn't that cool?
Mm-hmm.
There are also some studies that suggest that with meditators like Buddhist monks, etc., that suggest that when someone is in that theta state, they really have, the veil is very thin between this mundane, regular reality and this alternate reality that we could call spirit world, or in shamanic terms, non-ordinary reality. The shaman's job, whether through this or singing or like Tibetan shamanism, I did some training in Tibetan shamanism, and the facilitator, the trainer, he had beads and bells and was drumming and singing all at the same time to induce a state. Sometimes shamans will go to sleep and they'll do their work in their sleep. Not me, but some shamans will do that. So there's different ways to access this.
And how is that world? How is it when you're down there or up there, wherever that is?
That's a good question, Lilu. It's essentially many cultures, I won't say most, but many cultures that are shamanic cultures will describe the world, the non-ordinary world or non-ordinary realities, having 3 distinct worlds.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the lower world, the middle world, and the upper world, or celestial. Not underworld. That one's a little too loaded. It's the lower world. Lower world is one when you find a place that is anything that goes down. It could be a knothole in a tree, it could be a cave, it could be like Alice in Wonderland going down the rabbit hole. That's a lower world journey.
Mm-hmm.
So the shaman's job would be then to journey using drums, rattles, singing, etc., to this place that is an entrance into the lower world. And you go there and it looks pretty much like this world. Although, very strange things happen, more so than here, as if this isn't strange enough, but, very strange things. But it's also very, you can navigate it pretty readily. Always take your power animal with you. At least one of them, maybe more, but at least one of them you take your power animal. The shaman will journey to the lower world. Typically, that's where the animal spirits are. The spirit animals are. That's where typically I go to find the lost soul fragment. Not always, but that's more often than not. Of the three worlds, the middle world is this world. Let's say if someone, I know my sister just contacted me, and she's with a friend who's dying of cancer, is on a week or two to go, as predicted by the doctors, the physicians. So I said, only if he agrees to this, I'm happy to ask my power animal, Raven, to come over and help tend to him, or just to watch over him, or to help him have that certain power that may be needed to transition. Middle world would be, again, any calamitous event that occurs in the world. If it's appropriate to send a power animal or two over there, or to send prayers, that's the middle world. Okay, a middle world journey would be, I might go to see Aunt Jane, if she's ailing in some way, or to visit with her. That's the middle world. The upper world, or sometimes called the celestial, that's where the human-looking spirits reside. Our ancestors, archangels. I've met Merlin there. I've worked with Merlin on more than one occasion.
How cool must that be?
It's very cool. Now, it isn't necessarily that every shaman or shamanic practitioner has the same map, or has the same people or spirit animals, but for me, that's one of the main ones in the upper world. The other one is a spirit guide that's been with me, actually turns out, most of my life. His name, which I can now say, he wouldn't let me say it for several years, but I would refer to him as grandfather when I'd speak about him, but he's allowed me to say his name. He said for a few years, he said, if I give you permission to say my name publicly, your ego's just gonna take charge of it, and make it a big deal. And it's not a big deal, but he's allowed me to do that. His name is Ana O'Oto, and it's I don't know what language it is, or I do know what it means, but I don't know what language it is. He showed up to me in an initiatory experience on a mountain in Big Sur, California, a mountain 1,000 feet up. And 2 or 3 years later, I did a process with a shamanic colleague and learned that he really was with me since birth. I died when I was 6 months old, and I wanted out.
Oh.
And I was told I don't know any reports that say I died, but I did know that I had pneumonia in both lungs, and as my mother told me, we almost lost you. Well, they did. Huh. And in this vision, I went to the light, the tunnel, is often reported. You said you've talked to somebody about near-death experiences. Yeah. I go to the light and says, I don't want to come back here. Let me out. And there he was, the one I met on the mountain, Ana O'Oto. And he leaned over and he said to me, not yet. Not yet. So I said, oh, come on, let me out of here, dude. Not yet. And he did this 3 times. So that's where Ana O'Oto lives. That's where Merlin lives. There may be other archangels, ascended masters, anything that's, you could say, human-looking is in the celestial or the upper world. And I basically rely on my spirit guides to take me to wherever I'm needed for a particular thing. I probably journey in the lower world more than the upper, but there's really no difference in terms of which is more valuable or better, and there's no comparison like that. It's just where you feel the most comfortable. One of the main teachers that I know of apparently journeys mainly to the upper world, and another one journeys almost exclusively to the lower world. So it doesn't matter. So those are the 3 worlds anyway in non-ordinary reality.
And that doesn't take energy away from you.
If anything, it's restorative.
Yeah.
Especially, again, power animals. They provide that sort of power, that energy, that they supply that basically, as well as their guidance. And when I'm doing healing ceremonies or healing work on behalf of someone, whether just one-to-one or in a group process, if anything, I get a little tired afterwards, but I'm also very alert. I feel like I'm wide awake, and my body may be a little tired, but my spirit feels really strong. So that's one of the reasons
What a
I love
wonderful
this
feeling.
work. Yeah, yeah.
Well, it's been such a delight to spend this moment with you.
Well, thanks, Lulu. You're an exceptional interviewer too. I appreciate that.
Oh, this
so
is easy
thank
with
you.
people like you. I really loved it. This is awesome and very different than another interview, another piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
You know, another piece to bring us more full, more vibrant, and alive and ready to take on leadership. I think is really needed right now.
Absolutely.
And,
I agree with you totally.
we all need to retrieve our soul, you know, and
Yep.
fully let it out and speak
Yeah.
out its purpose. And
Yeah, you know, when I am healed, I am not healed alone. And it's the only thing I really have retained from the Course in Miracles. Well, it's not the only thing, but it's one of the main things. When I am healed, I'm not healed alone. When I am at peace, then a peaceful world appears before me. And especially, I would say, just as a closing piece, is whatever you can do to release the fear, you know, and go boldly into the next moment, the next moment, the next moment, and go with love. That's really where it's at. You know, it's been said over thousands of years, you know, what's the real key? And only, as a friend of mine says, only love is real. Only love is real.
I love that. Only love is real. This is it. Oh, yes. Thank you so much, Stephen.
You're welcome,
This
Lulu.
is
Thank you very
wonderful.
much.
Much love, my beautiful co-greeters.